Well, assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters, and sabahu al khair, or perhaps masa'u al khair, depending on what time of day you're watching this. Welcome to Mission Zero, and this is episode 6 of The Word with Friends. So today we're going to pick up where we left off last week in authority. Okay, so what I left you with last week was a question of, is the trust problem we have with God because we believe that His authority is trying to control us, trying to suppress us. So I talked last week about these two ideas of authority, exousia versus auxano, or mashal versus rabbah, are kind of this difference between building up or tearing down, suppressing, pushing down. Well, I want to make an analogy to that. Let's think about if you're building a house versus tearing a house down. When you're building a house, you are all about the detail, right? You're going to make sure that you paint every inch of the wall, you get the baseboards correct, you get the doors aligned, you get the cabinets hung properly, and that everything's level and balanced and the doors open and everything's fine. When you want to tear that house down, boys, bring in the wrecking ball, right? You don't care about order. It's chaos. It's just pure destruction. It's rough. It's detail versus just carelessness. Well, it's pretty interesting to me because we've had a saying in English for a long, long time that the devil's in the details. And that's supposed to get across the idea that in particularly legal contracts, it's the small details you don't pay attention to that will snipe you, that will get you, that will, condemn you or whatever. I don't believe a word of that. That's nonsense. The devil came to kill, steal, and destroy. He doesn't care two flips about details. What he cares about is generalities. Satan doesn't really want you to think about whether God's rule is exousia or auxano. What he wants you to just hear is that God's trying to exercise authority over you, and that doesn't matter, just hate against it. That highlights something in Satan that I really want to point out. And whether you believe in the idea of a tangible Satan and all this religious stuff or not, hear the story and let me explain something. In the book of John, chapter 1, verse 5, John writes, "For the light shineth in the darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not." Well, that's beautiful language. What does that actually mean? What he was pointing out was that when Jesus came to earth to save humanity, Satan had no idea what was going on. If he was paying attention to the details, Jesus was very clear all the way through his life exactly what he was doing, why he was doing it, and what his death would accomplish. But the darkness comprehended it not, because the darkness cares nothing about detail or paying attention. I'm going to take it to a more serious note for a second. When I was 27 years old, I fell into a deep depression. I spun myself into this circle where I was just depressed, and so I swallowed 4 bottles of hydrocodone and I lay down to die. And that's actually the moment that God spoke to me and changed my life. And we'll talk a lot about that as time goes on. But what I want to say is, when I swallowed those 4 bottles, when I decided this is the end of it, I'm going to kill myself, it was not because I didn't have friends and family who loved me. In fact, it was because I was in a dark hole and focused on a dark idea, and none of that rest of that mattered, right? This is what happens when you become suicidal, is you don't care if there are people that care about you. You don't care what the effect is to them in some dark little part of your heart. If you even think about it, you think, haha, this will show them. There is just the dark. All you see is pain. All you see is generality. All you see is I'll never get better. So just end it now. That's all about this idea of roughness, of generality, of suppressing. When you get into a depressed state, you suppress all other truth but the pain and misery that you feel right now. I want to make an analogy here. Have you ever stood like at the Grand Canyon or the edge of a cliff or on a really tall tower and somebody said to you, "Don't look down"? The reason people say, "Don't look down," is because if you do look down, you suddenly realize exactly how high you are, what a precarious position you're in, and that fear that takes you. If you go back to episode 2, I talked about fear, talked about the amygdala and the fact that it is this pattern matching engine that helps determine how you're going to react to a thing. When you look down, your amygdala says, "I'm really, really high. This is really, really terrifying. We could really, really fall, so I'm going to make you really, really nervous." And that anxiety that you feel, the shakiness that comes, actually makes it more dangerous. If you look down and you become scared, you are actually more likely to fall, to slip and fall, because you find yourself trying to back up away in a hurry and not paying attention. You suddenly are not paying any attention whatsoever to the detail of the cliff that you're standing on, and that's what makes it risky, right? That is really what sin is. In a lot of Paul's letters, the Apostle Paul's letters, right? Paul penned the majority of the New Testament. One of the things that he really harps on is that the law, the Old Testament, the Jewish law, brought about sin. Well, what did he mean by that? What he means is when Moses brought down the 10 Commandments, and when God laid the laws upon the people in Deuteronomy, it was God pointing out to the people, "You're really high, you're on the edge of a cliff, don't look down." That's what the law is. It's telling you, this is the hard line that you'll fall off of. This is where you no longer can recover back. If you think about it in that term, sin is like a shadow, like a carpet line. The more you focus on that line, the closer you will edge to it. And then it becomes inevitable that you're going to dance across the line. You're going to keep stepping into the things you're not supposed to do because you're trying to ride the rails of the minimum. Dr. Mark Rutland tells this story of a woman that came to him after a sermon that he gave and asked him, "How do I get a B? If I do all this stuff for God, if I do what he wants me to do, he's going to send me to Africa. That's an A. I don't want to get an A. How do I get a B?" The law, what Paul is saying is that the whole law, the Old Testament, this idea of what you should not do, is the attempt to get a B. And the focus on that B, the focus on that carpet line, the focus on the edge of that cliff will make you fall off. And it's partially because we have this tendency to go after what's forbidden us, but it's mostly because the fear that I won't be able to stand on this cliff and I'll fall over is what makes us fall. And so when I asked you last week, is the trust problem we have with God, that we believe he is trying to exousia, he is trying to mashal, he is trying to control us, put us down, push us down? I don't think so. Let's go to Genesis 3, where Adam and Eve eat the fruit. Right, I talked last week about in Genesis 1:28, God tells Adam and Eve, "Be fruitful, multiply, go forth, have dominion over the earth. But whatever you do, don't eat off that tree." So what do they immediately do? Focus on how to get a B. Subdue the earth, fill it, populate the whole planet, and control all of this stuff? That looks like work. I don't want to do that. Screw that. We're going to go eat the fruit. And that's what we all do. I'm going to make the case to you that no, we reject God's authority not because we think he's trying to suppress us, but because we believe that it's oxano, that it's rabah, that God is trying to grow us, to increase us, to make us multiply. Why? Because that looks like work and that looks hard. And what if I fail? And your amygdala kicks in and says, no, keep doing what you're doing right now. Last Friday, I started a new segment on Mission Zero, the Flashback Friday. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. One of the things I talked about is this idea that God orders your days. And that the reason that that's important is not because he's trying to exousia, he's trying to oppress us. It's because he wants to give us the freedom from choice. Now, let me explain that, because I don't want you to think that this is about a removal of your free will. The fear that you feel in the patterns that your amygdala finds and the responses that it gives to stop you from doing things is not meant to help you grow. It's meant to hold you static. It's the idea that you could close off. That fear is something that you have to overcome. And I know it looks like work. It is work. It is a constant struggle to grow. But you would never want to see your baby born and get to 6 months old and stop, right? You want to see them grow. You want to see the person that they're going to become. You want to be able to have conversations with them and to see them live their lives and to build them up. That's what you are as a parent, is to build up that child. You should have that same view towards yourself. And I know that's hard. It sucks to grow because it hurts. And you know, when you're growing as a teenager, your bones stretch. Like, I'm a big lanky guy. I got a lot of bone pain when I was a kid. All growth is that way. It is part of the diversity that makes life worth living, right? The problem with becoming suicidal or getting depressed is that you just hate where you're at. This is the catch-22 of humanity. Our amygdala, our brain, our entire physical body fights to keep us static. But we get instantly bored, melancholy, and hateful of sameness. And so the way to get out of that, the gift that God gave us, I talked several weeks ago about the Tower of Babel, and that what God gave us in that diversity was a reason to keep going. That's what God's authority is. That's what real authority is. It's not the holding down. It's not the subjugation and the suppression. There is absolutely a time for suppression. There is a time that it is right and acceptable to enforce law on someone, right? It's why we have jails. But that can't be the focus. You can't be trying to get a B, right? You can't be just trying to avoid breaking the laws. What you should be trying to do is striving for something greater. Everybody ain't going to Africa. Everybody doesn't have to become a missionary. Everybody doesn't have to become a pastor or a preacher, right? This isn't about increasing a religion. Who cares about a religion? I don't care what the doctrine you believe in is. What I want to do is help God's agenda to open your heart to me, to Him, to other people, and to open my heart to you, and to let you know that I do love you, and I do have grace towards all of you. And I know that there are a lot of people in my life right now that are really struggling with the same kind of darkness that I fought 13 years ago. And the thing that I really want to say, the thing that's so desperately important, is that that's not the truth, right? The truth of life is that there are all around you people who care about you, even if it's only one or two. I have a very close friend who's very distraught right now because there's a small number of people that care about them. Even if it's only one, life is worth living because there's 7 billion other possibilities out there for relationship and connectedness. And in that community, in that unity, in that celebration of diversity, that's where we find God. That's where we connect and unlock. And it is so unspeakably joyful to have that connection between two people. And we know what that is, right? Imagine that with all other people. The freedom in that, the freedom of forgiveness, the freedom of happiness and joy is that you don't have to focus on what not to do. All you have to focus on is what you love and what most fulfills you in this world through other people, because it's in other people that you find the thing that fulfills you. I hope that blessed you. I'm really excited about this. I could talk about it for 80 more years. I'm gonna go ahead and cut it for now. If you liked the video, give me some love. And if you enjoyed the video and want to see more like it, hit subscribe and click the little bell if you want to get push notifications. And if you didn't watch last week's video, here's a clip. In verse 40, we get kind of a skip ahead, right? The doodly-oo, doodly-oo, doodly-oo. Next week, we were going to talk about the word safe. And so I hope you come back for that. This Friday, I'll be back with another Flashback Friday, so definitely tune in for that. I love you, and God bless you, and peace out.